Welcome to another DragonLance Saga review episode. It is Bakukul Gildember the 17th. My name is Adam, and today I'm going to give you my review of Dezra's Quest by Chris Pierson. I'd like to take a moment and thank the DO Saga members and invite you to consider becoming a member. I'd also like to let you know that I started a Patreon account. You're welcome to click the links in the description to learn more about both. You can even pick up DragonLance gaming materials using my affiliate links, also in the description below. Now, this review is my perspective only. If yours differs, that's okay. Let me know what you think in the live chat, or if you're watching this after the fact, put it in the comments. Love to hear from you. All right, so the way this works is I haven't been having a whole lot of time to write down pre-written reviews, so I'm just going to reflect back on having listened to the audiobook of this as I was going back and forth to work all week. And that's really the gist of these reviews lately, but I am going to be shifting dramatically, going back to the old way that I've been doing reviews for at least a little while. Got some life-changing events that have happened, and so I'm going to be having more time to work on this specific channel, going back and doing like lore videos and stuff like that for at least a bit until life gets back on track, as it were, you know? All right, so let's talk about Dezra's Quest because there's a lot going on here. First and foremost, Chris Pierson's great. The author does a fantastic job of making you feel like, yes, this is in fact Dragonlance world. There are other books in this series that aren't as good as Chris Pierson's works. Spirit of the Wind was fantastic. Some of the other ones were okay. This one was okay. I think from all of his novels that I've read thus far, this is probably my least favorite, but that's not to say that I didn't enjoy it. I did enjoy this novel, but there are some issues with it. First and foremost, the character of Dezra. Before I even get into the story, I feel like I have to address this. The author writes Dezra, who is Caramon's daughter, supposedly takes after Tika more than Caramon. This is, of course, set in the Age of Mortals, early in the Age of Mortals. So, you know, Caramon is very, very old at this point, overweight, not really doing any adventuring or anything. And his two oldest sons are dead. Palin is, of course, trying to find out about magic at the Tower of High Sorcery and see what they're supposed to be doing right now. And so his two youngest daughters, the youngest of which is actually still working at the Inn of the Last Home, and Dezra kind of wants to have, she's basically taken after her mom and being a petty thief like her mom was when she was young. But she's 19 years old. And I have a daughter. I was raised with 3 older sisters. I am very, very hyper aware of how women act at 19 and at 15 and at 11 and so on and so forth. I have intimate knowledge of the behaviors, and I know you're going to always, make that comment. Well, everyone's a little different. Yes, that's true. Everyone is a little bit different, but puberty isn't. Puberty is a normal thing that everyone goes through, and that's when your hormones are going crazy. And typically, unless you have like a really oppressive household, most kids stop, acting like shit asses around 15, 16. Again, unless you have like overly controlling parents and stuff like that. My daughter went through her early teens and the problems and the hating the family and not wanting anything to do with anyone. But she ended that like early 15-year-old. Dezra's 19 and she's acting like a 13-year-old girl who is raging against her parents. It makes no sense. And you can't even play off a historical reference for that because kids were well into their adulthood at 19 in sort of medieval Renaissance eras because the lifespan was so short. So they were considered adults at like 15. And you could have your own farm and plantation of land as a really, really young man back in the day. And so you can't play off the whole idea of, well, it's just the era of fantasy that she's acting like. No, she's just a shit ass. Dezra is 100% shit ass. She's written like a spoiled brat. The whole novel through, she acts like a spoiled brat. and it's just unbelievably bad. So much so you would think that Caramon and Tika were like religious nut jobs that were trying to force this oppressive religion on their child, and so their child had to like rage against it. But they're not like that at all. So why is she a shit ass? I always come down on the side of sometimes people just suck. Just like some animals. Not all dogs are nice. They're not all like, oh, I can sense that you're a good human, so I'm not going to bite you. No, some dogs suck, and they're just aggressive and angry. Sometimes because of the way their owners treat them, sometimes just because that's how they are. They're shit asses too. You just run into this in every spectrum of life. Some people are just assholes. Dezra is an asshole, and I don't enjoy her in this book at all. There's actually a couple tender moments that I think are meant to be character-defining arcs, but she doesn't have a character arc. She starts as a shit ass and she ends as a shit ass, but she ends at least a little bit more understanding of her father and not as aggressive, still aggressive, but not as aggressive to him as she was at the very beginning. That's not a character arc. That's not starting in one place and then growing and changing. That's just starting as a shit ass and ending as a shit ass. And I just don't like it. I don't understand what... I don't get it. The age doesn't match. The character's motivations don't make sense. She just wants to go off an adventure. And so, like, she starts being a petty thief and stealing. And so Caramon is basically like, look, you're not supposed to be stealing. We didn't teach you to be a thief. So stop being a thief. And so she gets caught stealing again. He's like, you know what? If you want to be a thief, if you want to have a life of adventure, go. Just go. She's 19 years old. Like, even in fantasy land, that's age of consent where you can do whatever the hell you want. So why is this story treating the relationship between Caramon and her as if she was a 15-year-old or 13-year-old, and he was just like, leave my house if you want to be a deviant? No, she's a grown-ass woman. At 19, she can like live her own life at that point and go live on her own. It's not a big thing to say, leave my house at 19. Like, give me a break. So he tells, and the story is written as if that's like some big, like, clutch your pearls moment where Tika is like freaking out. And Caramon's like, look, you would have told her to leave the house too. And she's like, yeah, that's why I wanted you to talk to her, because you are usually more level-headed than I am. And so none of it makes any sense, because Tika has always been the one that keeps Caramon in line and keeps the family sort of grounded. Not Caramon. Tika's done that. Caramon is a drunk who has an abusive relationship with his even now dead brother that is still a piece of him. Now, he's not a drunk anymore. He shook that beast, but he still is like completely dependent on Raceland. He even talks about him in this novel. Like, you know, when I die, I wonder if Race will be waiting for me. I can't wait to see my old friends. And there's this really tender moment of Caramon reflecting on the loss of his other friends and how even Riverwind came to try to, talk with him when he was dying. And then Riverwind went off on an adventure and died himself. And so Caramon's just sort of feeling that survivor's guilt of being around when all of his friends are gone. And what does that mean? And what quality of life is he actually leading? And he's sort of getting those chest pains like Flint was getting when he was doing, a lot of activity. But he's an old ass man. And so, for him to be running around like he's 18 again is of course unbelievable and understandable that he'd be slow and weak. But instead of being understanding, Dezra, to that reality, Dezra mocks him constantly about being over his prime and not worth it, and he shouldn't even be on this adventure. He should be gone. So let's talk about the adventure, because clearly Caramon is written as Caramon should be. Tika is a little bit off, but okay. Dezra is way out of left field, crazy nutso chick. And so the whole story is focused around centaurs and Darken Wood. So when Chaos, during the Summer of Chaos, invaded Ansalon, it twisted one of the really old trees into something called Grimbow now. It created it as a daemon tree. You know, they have those daemon warriors and stuff, like chaos-infused monstrosities or aberrations. Well, this tree is one of them. And the Forestmaster strictly forbade anyone from attacking Dark Knights because they didn't want the Dark Knights coming in and upsetting Darken Wood. So they're like, look, let's just take a passive stance, stay out of the entire war, and let the mortals of Krynn deal with themselves while we hyper-focus on Darken Wood and doing what we're supposed to be doing, which is living our lives and protecting our land. Not all the centaurs agreed. Some of them fervently disagreed and were sort of ostracized and outcast. What this led to was these, I think it was like 4 or 5 different clans of centaurs starting like this, like war basically, where some of them broke off from their tribes or were outright thrown out of their tribes and were sort of become these, what do they call them? Renegades. Well, these renegades were then corrupted and twisted by this daemon tree called Grimbow, and they became something called the Scoronoi, or Scoronoi, I think it is. And whatever it is. They're like corrupted, twisted, chaos-infused centaurs is basically what they are. And they started an overt war with the other centaurs as Chaos is trying to kill the Forestmaster and eliminate all of the healthy, good centaurs. That's the whole setup of this entire novel. So one of the centaurs is sent out to find a Majere to help them. They're looking for Caramon to be a hero again and help them through this war. He approaches Caramon during one of the celebrations, and Caramon's like, no, I'm an old man. I'm not going to go fight your war for you. Like, that's not who I am now, and I just can't do it. I'm an old man. And so the centaur ends up figuring out that he can convince Dezra to go, and that will make Caramon go after Dezra, and so that he'll get Caramon Majere and Dezra Majere to fight his war with him. And so that's exactly what he does. He sees Dezra, and the thing is with Dezra, she's actually really effective as a warrior. She's semi-effective as a thief. She very much takes after her parents, and she is seemingly got a good head on her shoulders. She's just a shitty person. That's really what it comes down to. But she's an effective warrior. And so the centaur sees that, offers her the chance. She thinks she's abusing him or taking advantage of him by saying, okay, I want 200 steel once I get there. But he didn't tell her that it was a war, only that he needed some help with the conflict. And so they start traveling. And then, of course, Caramon finds out that his daughter went off with this centaur because there's this farmhand kid that like has his eyes on Dezra, and she hates this kid. And so Caramon takes this kid and a bard with him, and they all go after Dezra. Dezra and the centaur get ambushed by some of these Scoronoi or Scoroni, however they're pronounced. And she realizes that, oh, I wasn't told the whole truth, that this is actually a full-blown war that I'm going into. I did not plan for that, so you're going to have to pay me more money. And he's like, okay, I don't care. Like, I'm going to bring 2 Majeres with me back to this war. We're going to win. This is going to be great. So basically they meet up with Caramon and everyone. They still run into more of the Scoronoi, I can't say it. I don't know how to say this dang word. And basically the young farmhand dies, like straight up is murdered. And there's this semi-tender moment that's supposed to have existed between Dezra reflecting on the death. And I don't think it lands at all because she's still just a shitty human being. And you don't feel good things from shitty human beings. Not when they're portrayed the way that she's portrayed in this novel. So I don't buy any of the tenderness or the care at all when she was outright rejecting this guy, calling him annoying and, you know, everything short of being an asshole himself up until his death, which she is a direct cause of because she's the one that ran off with this guy, this centaur. There's also a whole lot of talking about gelding, about like removing balls. I don't know why, but it's like a big thing in the centaur community, and it's weird. There's like a lot of discussion about it. Uncomfortable. Like, I get that was a thing that happens in fantasy cultures, and arguably it actually happened in real life and stuff. But to have, usually it's like owners of horses that are neutering the mares in order to stop them from freaking out and having too much testosterone or something. In the same way you neuter your animals, right? You do it so that they don't act like crazy, monsters. And you don't want to have a whole overpopulation of whatever animal that you're doing this to. And you can make your own judgments whether that's good or bad. I don't care what you think. I think it's a good thing. We have way too many animals in shelters. We don't need more of them roaming streets or, adding to the problem. We need to take care of the animals we have. In any case, to have centaurs doing it to other centaurs is weird. I mean, just weird. I don't know why it's even a thing in this novel, but it's a thing. It's talked about way too much. Okay, so there's that. In any case, they finally meet up with the centaurs. They're told about how the Forestmaster has actually been taken by this Grimbow and his Skoronoi. I'm never going to get it right. And that they're trying to kill her. And so they have to go rescue her and fight them all in the process. And the only way to do that, or to defeat this Daemon Tree, is to find this axe called Soul Splitter. Well, this axe was given by the centaurs to the Fae because it was too powerful and they didn't want anyone wielding it with, evil intentions. And so they have to send Caramon, Dezra, and the Bard and one of the centaurs to go into the Fae realm and retrieve this axe from the Fae. They meet up with the Dryad, and there's this really great Dryad love scene with the Bard, written very awkwardly too, I might add. Even worse than the scene where Gilthanas is spying on Silvara taking a bath. It's worse than that, because the Dryad comes out fully nude and just hits on this Bard, and the Bard is just like, "Yes, nurse." Please. And so it says she starts like kissing him on his feet and then up his body until he gets to his mouth and he's filled with lust. And it's just the most awkward and uncomfortable experience of hearing about this Bard's sexual encounter with this Dryad. And you can have sexy scenes if they're written well. But I don't know. I mean, I can't pretend to know Chris Pierson's history with lovin'. But based on this alone, he needs more practice, because it was very awkward. In any case, it was worth the read just to have like a weird Dryad human bard love scene in a Dragonlance book. Super. It reminded me of the scene in The Last Unicorn, when Schmendrick the magician is tied to a tree and he tries to use magic to untie his binds and ends up animating the tree into this big busty tree woman who then makes him motorboat her and is telling him that she loves him. It's the weirdest scene of any cartoon, but it's a great 70s cartoon. If you haven't seen The Last Unicorn, do yourselves a favor. Great soundtrack, great animation, great voice actors, weird scenes in it. Some of them are really freaky, but they're awesome. It's a great film. Anyway, it reminded me of that awkward fantasy moment on screen. So they go into the Fae realm, which is, as far as I understand, this is only the second time we've ever gotten mention about the Fey Realm in Dragonlance. The first one was that Search for Magic trilogy that was mainly set over in Ergoth, and it was, about renegades and stuff. But this one, very much the same setup, but we're going back into the Fey realm. They ended up finding these Fey creatures who say, we don't have the axe. We actually got rid of it. And, we wouldn't give it to you anyway. And we can't even go get it ourselves. So then Caramon and them have to go and find the axe and get it from whoever has it, right? While that's going on, the Skoronoi are actively attacking the other centaurs and destroying nearly all of them. I mean, in a really brutal battle that is pretty interesting to read about. And then ultimately, Dezra goes down, finds this axe. It's kind of derivative of Kaz the Minotaur a little bit. But in any case, she goes down, finds this axe. She has to fight this stone golem. And she's sort of rescued by Caramon and the bard. And then they bring the axe back to the centaurs, realize that they're almost all dead from this huge battle that happened. And then Dezra has this really awkward, almost sex scene with a centaur. And I can't help but have this really uncomfortable vibe about a human having sex with a centaur. There's nothing good, because it talked about how the centaurs were believed to steal women away and have their way with them, and how centaurs would actually find connections with dryads and satyrs, and they would have love companions with them, right? But maybe it's me, but I can't help but get a mental picture when you tell me that a centaur is having sex with a normal, mortal-looking person, a humanoid person. It's an awkward image that instantly pops in my head, and I have to just flush it immediately because it's not something I want to dwell on, but it's presented to us in this novel more than once, by the way. And so to have Dezra be all for this thing, it was awkward. It was really, really weird. I don't know why there's so much gelding and sex with other species in this book, but maybe Chris was going through some stuff when he wrote this. But let's just erase your browser history is all I'm saying, Chris. It's just for your own benefit. Just stop. It's too much. So anyway, while all that's happening, a satyr who's working for Grimbow comes and steals the axe that they were going to use so that he can cut the unicorn horn off of the Forestmaster and finally kill her, because he's been cutting her throat every night, murdering her, and she keeps coming back. And so he can't kill her. And so his only hope to actually kill her is to use this soul splitter axe, because it's supposed to be super powerful and stuff. But now that the bad guys have it, and they're going to go kill the Forestmaster, the good guys have to try to race and catch up to them. So they try to go back into the Sylvan area, the Fey realm. They realize that chaos has been seeping into the forest and infecting the Fey realm, and the dryad that the bard was in love with. She turned into this really old dryad because of the infection of chaos. And they help them through the Feywild until they get to where Grimbow is. And then they assault, and the 9th hour, they kill the centaur in this really big battle that was trying to kill the Forestmaster. And then Caramon and Dezra cut down the Chaos Tree Grimbow through this massive battle. It's very sort of final act felt a little rushed to me, but then the center of the second act of the novel felt drawn out, needlessly drawn out, unnecessarily is the word I was looking for. And so it's weird because the pacing of the first quarter of this, or the first third of this novel is great. The first act's great. Second act's long. Third act's super short. So the pacing is way off throughout the whole thing. You never like Dezra, even after they win. And then Dezra's like, I'm going to go off on my own adventures. And she helps Caramon get back home and sort of has this moment of like, maybe you're not so bad after all, Dad. And he's like, oh, are you going to come home? And she's like, no, I'm going to go adventuring. And that's kind of the end. The Forestmaster has this nice little speech about life and stuff. And that's kind of it. So it would have been infinitely better if there was actually a character arc for Dezra, seeing that she is the central character of this entire story. We want a character arc, but we don't get one. We want a story that's exciting, and we get a lot of really great information about centaur culture, gelding, how centaurs have sex with humanoids. We get a lot of centaur information that, as far as I'm aware, has never existed before. So I really do appreciate that aspect of it. Maybe not all the details, but most of them. I enjoyed seeing Caramon on this sort of last hurrah adventure before War of Souls, and seeing him being this old man. Like, yeah, of course. And I like that. I like that he gets to have that era of his life. And Dezra, I'd never want to read anything about her again. I think she sucks. It's that simple. So if you like Caramon, if you like centaurs, if you like kind of derivative stories with a lot of gelding talk, you should definitely check out this novel. And, if you're just a Dragonlance completionist, definitely check it out, of course. But if you're looking for something fresh and new, or maybe Chris Pierson's better works, this isn't really it. So you could probably skip it, and you will not miss anything, because it doesn't really tie into anything else in Dragonlance. It's its own entity. The only real benefit is Caramon, about tying in, sort of timeline stories. Everything else is just sort of hand wave it away. So anyway, I see Chris has an insane amount of comments here. My gosh, man. Not quite as good as Spirit of the Wind, but still great. Pierson's the best non-Weiss Hickman writer you've ever read. Yeah, I agree. He is the best thing to happen to Dragonlance since Margot Weiss and Tracy Hickman's writing. The character Dezra was interesting. I have a nephew with similar traits. Is your nephew the same age? 19? Because I don't think he probably is. If he's acting like that, that would be crazy. Or he's a drug addict. I mean, I'm not throwing any shade. I'm just saying people act this way for a reason. They're either abused in an abusive household or an overly oppressive household on drugs, or they don't act like this. It's that simple. Dezra was annoying, but intentionally so, and given Tika's personality and history before Odic, that makes sense. I totally disagree with that assessment. I know that's what Chris Pierson's trying to infer, but Dezra's 19. Tika was a preteen. She was like 9 to 11 when Odic fostered her. So we cannot make the leap that because Tika was abandoned by her dad and had to live on the streets to survive, that's why Dezra acts like a shit ass. One does not equal the other. And I don't like the idea that your behavior is a direct reflection as an adult of your parents, because you have something called autonomy. And yes, you are affected by the culture in which you were raised, the household you were raised in, etc. We, as independent thinking human beings, are capable of change, and we are capable of taking control of our own lives. We are not simple automaton reflections of our parents. So I just disagree with that idea. Borlos was a great character. He was the human bard, by the way. For such a common character class, we've rarely seen them appear in Dragonlance. Yeah, bards were only introduced into Dragonlance in 2nd edition. In 1st edition, because in 1st edition, bards were basically a prestige class. You had to go through 2 or 3 different classes before you could then become a bard. That's why it was so hard in 1st edition. Hardly anyone ever qualified for it. So hardly anyone ever even tried. When you did find a bard, they were incredibly powerful. And so because Dragonlance came out of 1st edition, they were just never really a part of it because they were so rare. But then in second edition, it became a class, and so you could just jump right into it. So it makes sense that they would add it into this as a character class as well. You love the centaur culture, how they spoke, etc. Yeah, they spoke like old-timey British English. Thee and thy and thou. I don't know if it was great, but it was interesting. And the author, the voice actor who was reading the novel for the audiobook, he made Caramon and Tika like hard British. They talk like this, governor. Like, what? I've never in my mind thought that Caramon was a British accent dude. And look, I'm not trying to shame anyone's accent about how they talk or anything. I'm just saying I never imagined him with a British accent. And so to hear it really takes me out of the story. I'm just like, whoa, all right, simmer down, man. You can do a different accent, I'm sure. The fighting scenes were great, though one of your free criticisms was that there was a lot of them bogging down the middle section of the book. Yeah, there was a lot of battle. Too many centaur characters to keep track of. Yeah, for sure. The centaurs reminded you of the Kender character Anik. Asked if there was ever any horse on top, man on the bottom, centaurs. That's pretty funny. Centaurs losing the magical axe because they got drunk and partied was the funniest storyline ever. That hashtag that's so centaur. You love the callbacks such as Caramon being an effective fighter as a result of his training in the arena. There's a lot of little callbacks early on, which made the buy-in to the story easier. You like the part where Grimbow tried a mental attack of pure hate on Caramon. Bro, please. I lived with Raceland for 20 plus years. Yeah. The ending got you choked up. The idea of having to let your baby... I disagree with this. She wasn't a baby. She was a 19-year-old woman. Like, we may refer to them as young women, but she's a grown-ass woman, even in this era of time. Caramon was 18 when he went off into the War of the Lance. Like, and saying goodbye to your baby girl is hard. I mean, when my son moved out, he was 18, and yeah, it hurt a little bit, but you want them to leave. You want them to grow and be their own autonomous adults. That's why you raise them. That's the whole purpose of raising them, so that they can become independent, thinking, productive human adults, living on their own, owning their own lives and choices. That's what you're supposed to, as a parent, be preparing them for. And so when it comes, it's bittersweet, but when they leave the house, you're just like, I did my job. I did it. And I'm here if they need my help, and I'm here to listen, but this is them living their life, and I have to let it happen. And I think it is bittersweet, but it's a normal, natural part of, raising a kid. And so I just thought, oh yeah, well, let's just move on with this, because that's clear. He'd already gone through it with 3 boys. I don't, like, why is this one different? Anyway, Lucio, thanks for tuning in. You're so sad that Dragonlance books just started to be translated in Brazil in the last 10 years. We're still reading the War of the Lance. Oh, wow. Yeah, you're missing a lot of really great storytelling. Gelding of horses. Yeah, Engine Joe, how you doing, man? The Forestmaster, don't mess around. How else do you get centaurs, who are the epitome of Chislev, to be subservient? You control their ability to mate. They usually did it for punishments. That's why, when you dissent against your centaur tribe, they geld you and then cut your tail off and throw you out into the wild. It's really, really rough. Imagine 2 centaur or Barriar from Planescape trying to I don't know what that means. Shadow people look like Man-Bat. Yeah, for sure. Bet the lady who did the native deodorant commercials got a lot of fan mail when she was a horse. I don't know what that means. All right. In any case, that is my review of Dezra's Quest. It is you could skip it and not miss anything, but if you really want to be completionist, you might as well just read it. It's not as bad as a lot of the Dragonlance novels are, but it's not as good as Chris Pierson's other writings. So it's sort of a give and take, and that's all you can really ask for from a pulp fantasy novel. So check it out. Anyway, that's my review for Dezra's Quest by Chris Pierson. What do you think of the story? Did you like the idea of centaurs mating with other humanoids? And finally, how many times are we going to have a magical axe that is the only object that can defeat a bad guy, but you have to go on a quest for it first? Let me know in the comments below. Feel free to email me at info@dlsaga.com. I would like to take a moment and remind you to subscribe to this YouTube channel, ring the bell to get notified about upcoming videos, and click the like button. This all goes to help other Dragonlance fans learn about this channel and its content. I'd also remind you that I started a Patreon account. If you appreciate the projects that I do, please consider joining that, becoming a patron. This channel is all about celebrating the wonderful world of DragonLance Saga. Thank you so much for joining in that celebration. So until next time, my name's Adam for DragonLance Saga. Slán Javar.